This is CNN.
He went to Lebanon seeking the release of hostages and became a captive himself. Now Briton Terry Waite finally has been freed, along with U.S. hostage Thomas Sutherland.
The world watches Wall Street for a response to Friday's nosedive that saw a 120-point plunge in the Dow Jones Industrials. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Frank Sesno in Washington.
And I'm Catherine Crier at CNN Center in Atlanta. In the next hour or so, Terry Waite and Thomas Sutherland reportedly are to be turned over to British and U.S. envoys in Syria, the traditional first stop for Westerners freed from captivity in Lebanon. U.S., British, United Nations, and Lebanese officials all confirmed the two men were released today by the Islamic Jihad. For Sutherland, a U.S. educator, freedom comes 2,353 days, more than 6 years after his abduction. Like other freed U.S. hostages, he is expected to travel from Syria to Germany for tests and debriefing. Anglican Church envoy Terry Waite spent 1,763 days, or nearly 5 years, as a hostage. There is a report he may be flown to Cyprus before returning to England.
Thomas Sutherland's family plans to fly to Wiesbaden, Germany for a reunion. It is a bittersweet time for the family, largely as a result of the death of Sutherland's father-in-law. But Thomas Sutherland's daughter, Kit, says overall this Thanksgiving they'll have a lot to give thanks for. CNN's Mark Leff now with more on Sutherland's abduction.
Tom Sutherland was already a world traveler when he went to Beirut. He was born in Scotland, still has family there, moved to the U.S. to study and teach and become a husband and a citizen. He'd worked internationally in veterinary science and agriculture before 1983, when the American University of Beirut hired him to run its agriculture school. In June 1985, Sutherland was just back from a trip to the U.S. when gunmen grabbed him on the Beirut Airport Road. The Islamic Jihad sent a letter offering to trade him for 17 people jailed in Kuwait, but the Kuwaiti government said no. Since his kidnapping, Sutherland's family has had only scraps of news about him. Released hostage Benjamin Weir brought a private letter indicating Sutherland was in good spirits after 3 months in captivity. David Jacobson brought much the same news the next year. At one point, Church of England negotiator Terry Waite was working on his release.
Two people specifically in my sights, Terry Anderson and Tom Sutherland.
But Waite himself became a hostage. French journalist Jean-Paul Kaufmann, released after 3 years in captivity, said he and Sutherland shared a room for 3 months, chained and often blindfolded. Sutherland's family has continued to press for his release.
My job is to be the daughter of a hostage and hope that there's something that I can do. And so we just continue and really stay positive and know that there is a time that this will all come to an end.
Hostage journalist Terry Anderson said in early October that he and Terry Waite and Tom Sutherland were well, that Sutherland had heard his wife and daughter on the radio and still talked about going back to his job at the American University of Beirut. Now, Sutherland's captors are letting him speak. Mark Leff, CNN, reporting.
Throughout the mid-1980s, Terry Waite traveled through the shadowy world of Lebanon's hostage-takers on a number of occasions, trying to win freedom for Westerners held there. He was on just such a mission in 1987 when he disappeared, the hostage negotiator himself becoming a hostage. More now on Terry Waite's life and career from reporter Jeffrey Archer.
Terry Waite is not a priest, but he had remarkable influence in the entourage of the then Archbishop of Canterbury, Robert Runcie. He became a flying negotiator, arranging the release of political prisoners. First in 1981, when he secured the freedom of 3 British missionaries held by Ayatollah Khomeini's regime in Iran. He met with men the politicians and diplomats couldn't afford to be seen with, men like Colonel Gaddafi, arranging in 1984 the release of 4 Britons held by the Libyan leader. Then he took on the bear garden that was Beirut. It was Americans who'd been taken hostage, some of them churchmen. Negotiating in Beirut was an altogether tougher affair than he had experienced before.
I walk into this building alone, I'm collected by someone and blindfolded. Then I'm taken to another location, still blindfolded, and I have to conduct discussions while someone has a gun in my bag.
He helped 3 Americans to safety, including the Reverend Lawrence Jenko. He returned to Beirut, reveling in the drama of the place.
What are you planning to do now?
Take cover, I think.
Then, in 1987, he himself became a prisoner of the forces he had labored to understand. After his disappearance, his role appeared less innocent. Stories linked him with the Iran-Contra affair. Colonel Oliver North, aide to President Reagan, had sold arms to Iran in exchange for hostages. Waite had been an unwilling participant, North said.
Terry Waite once said, and I think the most important thing is being able to listen to the other person's point of view. That report was filed by Jeffrey Archer.
It was a gray day for the world's financial markets today as investors braced for another possible Black Monday on Wall Street. Global markets fell following Friday's biggest plunge in U.S. stock prices in 2 years, but the fears of a Black Monday appear to be unfounded. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 19.68 points at 2962.88. 202 million shares have traded hands. Still earlier today in Tokyo, the Nikkei fell 699 points, a drop of nearly 3%. We'll have a complete financial update at hour. And still to come, raised hopes finally realized, reactions from the families of the freed hostages to the news they have long been waiting to hear. And a city brought to its knees, a symbol of Croatian resistance in the Yugoslav civil war, now in ruins.
You know what's smart? This Magnavox digital CD shelf system that's incredibly powerful, compact, but what's really smart is this Magnavox 8mm Easy Cam that weighs less than 2 pounds. But what's really brilliant is this 13-inch TV with a built-in VCR. But what's ingenious is this 31-inch with a smart window that lets you see other channels and swap the picture. You know what's smart? This Magnavox digital CD... Again. Go away.
The ingenious products from Magnavox. They're smart, very smart.
Can you find the drug pusher in this picture? It's hard to believe kids this young are at risk because someone their age may be offering them drugs. Someone they think is their friend. Talk to your kids about drugs. Tell them that anyone who offers them drugs is not a friend.
Come, slip into a Polynex-style massage. Dial your choice of 4 shower heads. Tingling, pulsing, vigorous, or fabulous mist. Turn on a smile with Polynex.
The Polynex high-intensity power massage. The perfect way to conduct your life with less stress and fewer aching muscles. Turn on a smile with Polynex.
With 5 powerful cleaning agents, Fantastic not only out-cleans all others on greasy kitchen dirt, it's the perfect do-it-yourself cleaning kit for almost every surface in your kitchen and bath. 5 Cleaner Fantastic. More power, more places.
This week on James Bond Wednesday, an evil genius starts World War III, and the Soviet spy is Bond's only ally. Roger Moore is 007, the spy who loved me. Wednesday night at 8:05 Eastern on TBS.
We, of course, are awaiting live pictures of the freed hostages from Damascus, which, of course, as soon as we receive them, we'll be bringing to you. Families of the released hostages at first were skeptical, then joyous at the news their loved one's ordeal was over. David Murray, who is Thomas Sutherland's brother-in-law, thinks Sutherland will quickly recover from the strains of captivity.
I would bet that Tom will bounce back. Tom has a great sense of humor. He's a tough guy, and I think that if anybody could survive this and bounce back quickly, why, Tom could. And I think some of the reports out of Lebanon by people that have been released before have indicated that Tom has held up pretty well. Obviously, it's got to be a very, very tough thing. Mm-hmm. And so I expect it's going to take a while for him to readjust. But I got a lot of confidence in him. He's a great guy, and he'll do fine.
John Waite was being interviewed by a television reporter when he heard the news bulletin confirming his cousin Terry Waite was free.
Oh, my God. Oh, God. I've thought about this for so long, for 5 years. But I still have to see him. I mean, it's ludicrous. We have screwed down our hopes and wishes so often to make sure that they were never dashed. That, you know, I mean, you can bring me, you can tell me, you can read me 100 bulletins. I will have to see that man on the television screen before I believe it.
Church bells rang out across Britain in celebration of the release of the hostages. British officials, including Prime Minister John Major, say they're delighted with the news of Terry Waite's release.
There have been no backstage deals done, if that is the question you're asking. I'm just very pleased the hostages are out and that the atmosphere has changed. That's what we've wanted to see. We've worked for it for a long time, as my predecessor did. It's now happened. Most of the hostages are home with their families. I hope all of them soon will be.
I'm looking forward to the moment when we can greet Terry on British soil, and there'll be a lot of opportunity, I think, to give thanks for all those who've prayed and worked for this day and to share the happiness of the family.
Mrs. Waite, yes, I've been in touch with Mrs. Waite today, and she is thrilled, of course, very apprehensive, because it's been nearly 5 very long years, and she is a quiet person who protects the privacy of her family very much. That's important to her and to them, but she is looking forward to Terry's homecoming very much indeed.
The Archbishop of Canterbury is asking reporters to give the former captives peace and space so they can recover from their ordeal.
There is cautious reaction, meanwhile, from the Bush administration on the release of the 2 Western hostages. White House spokesman Marlon Fitzwater called the development, quote, very hopeful. State Department spokesman Richard Boucher says the U.S. Embassy in Damascus has been told by Syrian officials that Sutherland and Waite are indeed free and in Syria. But Boucher says it is important to remember others who remain captive.
We're pleased with the news of the release of 2 hostages. At the same time, we'd like to repeat our call for the immediate, safe, and unconditional release of the hostages and a full accounting for all those who may have died in captivity, including the return of the remains. There are 3 other Americans, Terry Anderson, Alan Steen, and Joseph Sicipio, and 2 other Germans who are still being held. And of course, they remain in our thoughts. As far as how this came about, I guess it's not terribly insightful, but the clearest explanation would be the work of the UN Secretary General and his staff.
The 2 Germans who remain in captivity are Heinrich Strubig and Thomas Kempner. Both were abducted in May of 1989 in South Lebanon.
It is the final showdown for a key symbol of Croatian resistance. A hardcore group of Croatian defenders in the city of Vukovar is defying an order to surrender and making one last stand against Yugoslav federal forces. The Serbian-led federal troops are in control of most of the city after a fierce 3-month siege. Many of the city's Croatian defenders reportedly have surrendered. The federal army promises to crush the last holdouts within 2 hours unless they surrender. The Western European Union is considering a plan to send in warships to the besieged port of Yugoslavia. Under the plan, the 9-nation group would set up a humanitarian corridor for aid ships to travel in and out of the war-torn country. At the same time, UN Special Envoy Cyrus Vance is meeting with Yugoslav leaders to discuss the possible deployment of UN peacekeeping troops to separate the warring factions.
And when we come back, desperate times, desperate acts. A look inside one Soviet city and a talk with a top advisor to Mikhail Gorbachev. All ahead.
AT&T is constantly searching for new ways to help our customers save money on long distance.
We run forecasts, look at profiles, we do comparisons.
And what we've recently discovered is remarkably simple.
We just got the airline tickets, so...
Those customers who spend over $11 a month on long distance could start saving right away by signing up for the AT&T Reach Out America plan. If you spend over $11 a month, you could save on long distance too. All it takes is one call to 1-800-547-8600.
AT&T, this is Terry. How can I help you?
Hi, Terry. I was wondering if you could help us save some money on our long-distance calls.
This is about people. We have to put ourselves in the customer's place.
Why don't you tell me a little about the way you use long distance?
Well, we make long-distance calls all day long.
You'll learn how you could save 24 hours a day. 25% on calls made after 5 p.m.
Customers say 25% is a pretty good chunk.
And enjoy discounts on daytime calls.
I guess you could say we're pretty good customers.
Who are you talking to?
Terry, would you mind repeating that?
The Reach Out America plan is so easy to use because it helps you save when you call without changing the way you
want to pick
call.
up the phone and be able to call your relatives, your loved ones, and not think how much it's going to cost you.
You can save 24 hours a day. There's a 25% discount in the evenings and a daytime discount as well.
My husband has a sister in Madrid that he calls sometimes.
That's perfect. The plan has a discount on calls all over the world.
What about AT&T calling cards? We each have one.
No problem. The plan lets you save on calls wherever you are.
If you spend over $11 a month on long distance, AT&T can help you save. So call us now at 1-800-547-8600.
Good enough for me.
And thank you for calling AT&T.
Honey, that sounded pretty good. Why don't we sign up?
We just did.
Great. Who do we call?
Call AT&T right now for a special limited time offer from Reach Out America.
The long, cold Russian winter is getting underway, and with the Soviet economy collapsing, the people are worried, will there be enough food? CNN's Claire Shipman is in St. Petersburg.
The sun barely rises in St. Petersburg this time of year, and as residents try to stock cupboards, dispositions match the grayness. People line up before the stores open, even for bread these days. One of the shoppers gets some rude treatment from another customer who doesn't think she should be complaining to Western cameras.
I can talk about my life if I want to. This economic path will lead us to civil war. Is this what perestroika is about? There's so much perestroika, there's no normal life anymore.
It's the elderly who create the lines. Store workers say they always have plenty of bread. But pensioners still worry that the filling and cheap staple will disappear. Reformist St. Petersburg Mayor Anatoly Sobchak knows it will be a difficult winter, and he spends his days juggling crises. On the line here with the commander of the St. Petersburg Fleet, arranging delivery of 100,000 tons of potatoes bought in Hamburg. The dynamic politician is moving fast to make St. Petersburg a model of economic reform, encouraging overseas investments, selling off state stores, and pushing an ambitious plan to make all residents homeowners within a year. To strengthen market thinking among the people, he's planning to sell humanitarian aid rather than give it away.
It should be sold so that the citizens will try to work to earn money to buy the food. It's important for us to have people with incentive and enthusiasm for work.
Sobchak says he wants to make lazy people work, but when people are 60, they can't start over. We younger people can, but if older people can't afford humanitarian aid, that's an outrage.
Sobchak says he plans to raise pensions and to create special stores for retired people. But in the meantime, there's no denying that for many of the elderly, the future hasn't been this frightening since the 900-day German blockade during World War II. Even here in downtown St. Petersburg, just a glimpse behind this arch reveals true poverty. Things were never great in this country, but scenes of destitution like these are new. Valery Vasilyev is 71, a trained biologist who worked as a food inspector near St. Petersburg. He sleeps in this broken-down, abandoned building.
I like the radiator here. It's warmer than other buildings.
Valery says his pension has been lost in a bureaucratic shuffle. He earns money walking dogs and looking after children.
I get a little money. I don't eat much.
Some estimate there are as many as 20,000 homeless people like him in St. Petersburg. He says he has children and grandchildren.
They don't want to have anything to do with me anymore.
Some of the changes in this city do inspire hope, but not in this courtyard. They were promised security in exchange for building communism, and instead many old people spend their time picking through garbage, trying to make it through another day. Claire Shipman, CNN, St. Petersburg.
The world's richest democracies are considering ways to help the Soviet Union make it through this winter. Representatives from the so-called Group of Seven Nations began talks today with Kremlin and Republic leaders on economic aid, with U.S. Ambassador Robert Strauss saying the United States should risk, quote, a couple of $billion to help prevent food riots. The collapsing economy appears to be accelerating the erosion of Mikhail Gorbachev's power. Just last week, Russian Republic President Boris Yeltsin issued new decrees, essentially taking over the finance ministry, along with vast reserves of oil, gold, and other vital commodities that had been used to finance the Soviet government. To discuss all of this now, in Chicago, Mr. Gorbachev's special advisor and one of the principal architects of perestroika, Aleksander Yakovlev. Mr. Yakovlev, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Let me start with the weekend decrees and recent steps by Boris Yeltsin. Do they, in your estimation, further seriously undermine Mr. Gorbachev's standing?
Я не думаю так.
I don't think so.
Потому что думаю, что эти шаги Ельцина...
It is my opinion that those steps of Yeltsin...
Ельцина во многом оправданы.
To a very great extent are justified.
Потому что Ельцин или Республика России, она живет в
определенном
окружении.
And the Republic of Russia, they exist in a certain surrounding.
И он хочет защитить и российскую
And Yeltsin wants to protect the Russian economy.
Well, Mr. Yakovlev, if I may then ask you, we've seen reports, for example, that the Soviet Union's gold reserves have dwindled to very little, maybe a tenth of what they were at their height, that the foreign currency is in very scarce supply. Is the Soviet Union bankrupt?
No, I don't think so. Why? We are a very rich country, and we have difficulties, we have problems, but we will survive. You see, I promise.
Well, let me ask you, sir, then, in keeping with that promise, if you were in Moscow right now and you were meeting with that group of 7 nations, what would be at the top of your list and your request for what the G7 can do?
You know, I met, being in Moscow, with this group. It's very interesting and professional group. Now I feel that for us it would be necessary, it would be wishful to postpone our debts, that's all.
To postpone the debts?
Yes.
What about humanitarian assistance, medical supplies, food, that sort of thing?
It would be very good, because, you know, it is a question of our survival of our democracy. The stake is just this, and the choice is very simple, to help us to save our democracy, not to help. It means that we can go to dictatorship.
How much does the Soviet Union need over this winter?
Oh, it's very difficult to say for the Soviet Union in general, but I think that the first help, I would say, Moscow needs, St. Petersburg, big cities, you know, it is a problem. Not the problem of the, you know, outside the people which outside of the cities, but Moscow, St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, Kemerovo, Novosibirsk, Chelyabinsk, and so on.
Well, Mr. Yakovlev, you say the Soviet Union isn't bankrupt, but just today, for example, we heard that there is so little foreign currency that TASS announces that there will not be any further coffee contracts for coffee imports from countries like India. That sounds very serious.
Yes, but my dream, if you like to say so, my dream is that foreign investors, Western investors, should go to the Soviet Union, and I hope without risk. It would be very good for us.
Let me ask you one further question that reaches beyond the Soviet borders, and that is the strategic stability, as it's called, and for example, control of nuclear weapons, being able to put into force the recently signed START or CFE treaties that touch on nuclear weapons, conventional weapons. Is there enough central authority left, for example, to live up to the Soviets' treaty commitments?
Нет, я думаю, что мы будем держаться наших.
No, I think we will stick to our commitments and we will do so firmly.
Недавно Государственный совет принял
Recently, the State Council adopted a decision, a firm decision,
ядерное оружие и
to keep nuclear weapons
военную политику в
and
одних руках.
To keep all the military policies in general in one hand.
В руках центральной власти.
That is in the hands of the central authorities.
Я думаю, не может быть сильного беспокойства на этот счет.
I think nobody should worry about it.
Aleksander Yakovlev, we appreciate your time. We're going to cut off here because we understand that something is happening at the Foreign Ministry in Damascus, Syria, and for that and more, we go back to Catherine Crier in Atlanta. Catherine, where are you?
Well, Frank, we're getting the first pictures from the Syrian Foreign Ministry, where news is that Terry Waite and Thomas Sutherland have been handed over to their respective ambassadors in Damascus. We, of course, are awaiting the press conference as reporters are awaiting their admission into the Foreign Ministry. We'll take a short break and be right back.
And here's defender Bill Jackson warming up for his title bout with the challenger, the Stork Chocolate Reason. And the fight is on. Oh, it looks like the Stork Chocolate Reason may triumph this time, but hey, Bill shows plenty of staying power. He's no quitter, and yeah, the tide has turned. Bill Jackson has him up against the ropes. Bill Jackson has licked the Stork Chocolate Reason, and now he's enjoying his victory. Stork Chocolate Reason, the chocolate challenge.
For many people, food is an obsession. Like the alcoholic abuses alcohol, those suffering from eating disorders abuse food.
If your family has pleaded with you to do something about your eating problem, call Woodridge for help now. Woodridge is located in the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of northeast Georgia. Treatment is Medicare and OHIP approved and is covered by most insurance. Transportation is provided. Call Woodridge now, 1-800-826-7950.
In Switzerland, Ricola has been soothing sore throats and relieving coughs naturally for over 60 years. Ricola is a blend of 10 organically grown alpine herbs and natural flavors, providing pleasant-tasting natural relief. Ricola, the natural choice for soothing sore throats and relieving coughs naturally.
We can take a look at some more live pictures from the Syrian Foreign Ministry in Damascus as we await the start of a press conference with freed hostages Terry Waite and Thomas Sutherland. And as we await the start of that press conference, let me tell you what's coming up on World Report, how the war in Yugoslavia is damaging its neighbors, and a report from Syria on a huge rally that brought Damascus to a standstill. Stay with us.
Remember how much fun it used to be to play in the snow? Well, it still is. To visit a place where the snow is as good as it gets and all the ways to play in it have been perfected, just call 1-800-COLORADO. Get a free vacation guide, a travel discount certificate from Continental, and a chance to return to childhood.
International Hour continues, followed by Early Prime after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
That was Vivian. I just found out Bill has cancer.
What?
It just showed up on his physical. I can't believe it.
Where is he?
He's at Iowa Methodist.
Right now, you may not know or care that Iowa Methodist is in the top 1% of cancer treatment centers in America. But when cancer enters your life, it's good to know you have one of the nation's leaders on your side. We're in this fight together.
Get ready for Ice Capades, presented by Legs Sheer Energy. World-class figure skating is coming to Vets Auditorium Wednesday, November 27th through Sunday, the 1st of December. Enter Hanna-Barbera's World of Fun and Excitement on ice with a Heritage Cablevision Ice Hot $2 off ticket offer. It's a hot deal for young people and seniors.
It's hot.
See Ice Capades, presented by Legs Sheer Energy, coming to Vets Auditorium. Don't miss this family favorite or your Ice Hot ticket offer from Heritage Cablevision.
This is CNN.
And checking our top story on the International Hour, American Thomas Sutherland and Briton Terry Waite are in Syria at this hour, free men at last. What you are seeing in just a moment from now will be a live picture from the Syrian Foreign Ministry, where we are expecting in just a short time to actually see those two gentlemen. Obviously, we lost that picture for the moment there, but that is the traditional point of first public exposure for hostages once they come out of Lebanon. Again, that picture from Damascus, Syria. Sutherland had been a hostage in Lebanon for nearly 6.5 years, Waite for nearly 5. 3 Americans and 2 Germans are still held, but officials believe they could be free by year's end. For a look at the day's financial headlines now, we go to Beverly Schuch, who's live at the New York Stock Exchange. Beverly.
Thank you, Frank. The storm appears to be over here on Wall Street, at least for now. Stocks are rallying in the final half hour of trading. Blue chip stocks like IBM, Merck, and Coca-Cola attracting most of the buying attention here today. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is at its high for the day. It is up 24 points at 2967.5. Big board volume is heavy, has been all day. 218 million shares have traded. The blue chips have spent most of the day in the positive territory, and now the rest of the market is heading higher as well. The New York Stock Exchange Composite Index up 0.75 of a point. The Standard & Poor's 500 up almost 2 points. Only the American Stock Exchange is down. It is down 2 2/3 points. The NASDAQ index of over-the-counter stocks, a key indicator of smaller issues, is up 2 1/4 points, coming back from a nearly 5-point loss earlier. Pressure from the White House and the banking sector is stalling legislation to cap credit card interest rates. A House panel shelving a vote on the bill that limits those interest rates. Last week, the Senate passed a bill capping rates at 14%, but the Senate may now reconsider that bill as well. Shares of credit card issuers are sharply higher on that news. Adventa surging 4 points. Citicorp is up 1/4 of a point. Bank One adding 1 5/8, and Chase Manhattan tacking on 1/2 point. Upjohn's drug Halcyon is getting a new look. In October, Britain suspended Upjohn's license to market Halcyon on concerns that high dosages caused dangerous side effects. Halcyon is used to treat insomnia. The new label and packaging will emphasize the pill should be used for short-term usage and in small doses. And finally, tonight on Moneyline with Lou Dobbs, a look at one of the nation's troubled spots, New England. Our guest will be the president of the Boston Federal Reserve. That's tonight at 7 and 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And right now, one last check of the Dow shows that it is up almost 26 points. And that's the latest in business news. We'll be back at 4 o'clock with the closing numbers. I'm Beverly Schuch reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange.
Thanks, Bev. And just ahead on CNN World Report, the face of the Austrian public school system is changing, and that has helped change the face of the Austrian parliament. We'll tell you how.
As refreshing as it looks. A new shower massage from Teledyne Waterpick.
More reliable than most, this umbrella. For it comes from our agents and 35,000 employees dedicated to customer service. Open in case you want insurance and investment expertise the traveler's way. You're better off under the umbrella.
This morning, everything seemed fine. But as the day wore on, he felt feverish, weak. And though every muscle in his body ached, he kept going. Now, with the job done, he has a raw, sore throat, congestion, and a hacking cough. Steve McKee knows it's a flu, and he's got to get home to relief. Theraflu relief. Theraflu is serious flu medicine doctors recommend. Strong, hot liquid relief to ease flu symptoms fast. Theraflu. Your flu misery stops here.
Good talk, great guests, and your phone calls. That's Larry King Live.
I didn't put a jacket on? No.
It's a show where you'll meet interesting people.
I would watch you on daytime, Larry.
A show that's both informative and entertaining.
Are you in awe of me?
Yes.
Okay, rest.
I feel so good now. And always full of surprises. Bye-bye. So join me for Larry King Live every weeknight on CNN.
And just a reminder, we are awaiting that news conference in Damascus, Syria at the Foreign Ministry, where we are expecting to see soon Terry Waite and Thomas Sutherland, the newly freed or recently freed hostages from, Western hostages from Lebanon. We will bring you that news conference as soon as it becomes available to us. In the meantime, here's Cheryl Atkinson for a preview of what's coming up for our U.S. viewers on Early Prime. Cheryl?
Frank, in the wake of his resounding defeat in Louisiana, David Duke dropped some hints about his political future. The law may protect pregnant women from discrimination in the workplace, but is it working? And we'll tell you about a ballooning controversy in Chicago. It concerns the size of the city's police force. We'll have those stories and more coming up at the top of the hour on Early Prime.
Welcome to CNN World Report, where we bring you news as reported by broadcasters around the globe from their perspective. Hours before the Western hostages headed to Damascus, the streets of the city were filled with citizens chanting and singing the praises of their leader. President Hafez Assad is in his 21st year in power, and Syrian television reports he appears headed for a fourth 7-year term.
The Syrian People's Assembly has unanimously approved the Ba'ath Arab Socialist Party's original leadership's resolution to nominate President Hafez al-Assad for a new term as a head of state. The People's Assembly set Monday, the 2nd of December, 1991, as a date for holding the referendum. It is noted that the current term of President Assad expires at March the 12th, 1992. Supporting the resolution of the People's Assembly and expressing gratitude to the achievements realized in Syria during the leadership of President Assad and since 1970, Syria witnessed celebrations and mass rallies in which participated millions of Syrian citizens. This is Elisa Kleinen from Syrian TV for CNN World Report.
For more live pictures out of Damascus, now let's return to Frank Sesno in Washington. Frank?
Thanks, Catherine. We received some pictures just a few moments ago. The first pictures that we're aware of former hostages Terry Waite and Thomas Sutherland in Damascus, where, according to reporters on the scene, the two former hostages have now been turned over to their governments. There you see the pictures. On the left, in the sweater, Terry Anderson, taken captive in 1987, and on the right there, talking to a Syrian journalist, Thomas Sutherland, former agriculture dean of the American University in Beirut. He was taken captive in 1985. Their release leaves just 5 Western captives still held in Lebanon, part of an ongoing ordeal, however, and some observers and some U.S. officials say they hope this ordeal will be over by Christmas for all the hostages involved. Once again, though, what you're seeing is the first picture we're aware of Thomas Sutherland, taken captive in 1985 in Lebanon, speaking to a reporter just moments ago, apparently, at the Syrian Foreign Ministry in Damascus. We'll bring you more pictures and more news of these events as they become available. Catherine?
Thanks, Frank. And returning to CNN World Report, a group of hardcore Croatian fighters are making what may be a last stand in the city of Vukovar. The Yugoslav news service says most Croatian forces in the badly damaged town have agreed to surrender. The army is allowing civilians to evacuate their ruined homes. The damage from the fighting across Yugoslavia already extends far beyond the country's borders. Antenna TV from Greece reports on how the war has damaged Greek tourism and trade.
The Yugoslav crisis has taken a heavy toll on the Greek economy, which has suffered over $1 billion losses up to now. The war has affected mostly foreign trade and tourism.
40% of Greek exports and imports were being carried through Yugoslavia, but since the crisis started, this route has been abandoned. There are 4 routes towards European markets, and the one through Yugoslavia is the safest, shortest, and most economical. Alternative routes have almost doubled the delivery time and have...
All right, we're going to interrupt that report to return to some live pictures out of Damascus, Syria, where obviously reporters have been waiting to hear from Terry Waite, Briton Terry Waite, and American Thomas Sutherland after their release by their captors in Beirut. We obviously have no control over the pictures you're receiving. They're being delivered by Syrian television, so we have no control over what they're showing you at this time. But we can certainly see the reporters gathered around and can see brief glimpses of, I believe we saw a moment ago, Terry Waite. There we see him. Terry Waite, the Anglican Church envoy, having spent nearly 5 years as a hostage. You can hear questions beginning to be propounded. And of course, with him should be American Thomas Sutherland.
Terry Waite وتوماس ساذرلاند قد تكللت أخيرا بالنجاح، ومن الطبيعي أن ارتياحنا لن يكتمل إلا بعد إطلاق سراح باقي الرهائن. تعلمون جميعا أن سوريا بتوجيه ثابت ومستمر من السيد الرئيس حافظ الأسد بذلت جهودا كبيرة لإطلاق سراح جميع الرهائن من منطلق إنساني بالتعاون مع الجمهورية الإسلامية الإيرانية، وسوف تستمر سوريا في بذل جهود لإطلاق باقي الرهائن، ونحن نأمل أن تتكلل جهودنا بالنجاح في إغلاق ملف الرهائن قبل نهاية العام الحالي.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to declare...
We are hearing, of course, remarks from the Syrian, a representative from the Syrian Foreign Ministry, as we await comments, of course, from the 2 freed hostages.
Both Mr. Terry Waite and Mr. Thomas Sutherland. It is natural that we don't feel relief completely unless all other hostages be released. All of you know that Syria, under the continuous instructions from President Hafez al-Assad and with the help and cooperation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, has exerted a lot of effort to get all hostages be released, starting from the humanitarian principle. And Syria will continue in its effort to get the release of the remaining hostages. We hope that our efforts will succeed in closing the trial of hostages before the end of this year. Thank you.
Your Excellency, I would like to thank you very warmly for the help which the Syrian government has given in achieving the release of Terry Waite. I should also like to thank the Secretary General of the United Nations and his special representative. There will be an enormous sense of pleasure and relief in England at Terry's release. He is held in special esteem, not only because he is the representative of the Archbishop, but also because of the courage that he has displayed and the sacrifice that he has made for the release of other hostages. This is the end of a chapter. It is not the end of the book. There are still other hostages held, and the British government will continue to work with all its efforts until those hostages, wherever they may be held, are released. Thank you.
Your Excellency. Quiet, please.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I think first of all, I would like to say to the Syrian government our grateful thanks for their hospitality and care during the last few hours. Of course, there are so many people we need to thank. The British government, the United Nations, churches, and more especially, I think, ordinary people around the world who have kept the name of the hostages and others alive. And that to us has been supremely important. This afternoon, when we were sitting together in our cell, chained to the wall, as we have been chained to the wall for the last 5 years, and in some cases of Tom and others for 7 years, 23 hours and 50 minutes a day, one of our captors came in and told us that Tom and myself would be freed this evening. He also said to me, "We apologize for having captured you. We recognize that now this was a wrong thing to do. That holding hostages achieves no useful, constructive purpose." He went on to say that before the end of the month, Joseph Scipio and Alan Steen would be released. We hope within the next 5 days. He furthermore said that by the end of the month, Terry Anderson would be set free. I asked him then about the German hostages, and I'm sorry to say that at that point he could give me no further positive information, but he did say that he hoped very much that that matter too would be cleared up eventually and as soon as possible. That to us is encouraging and good news. And so, therefore, thank you all very much. There are many, many other things to say, but enough for the moment. No question now.
Mr. Vice Minister, on behalf of President Bush, I would like to express our thanks to President Assad and the government of Syria for their role in this happy event. Tom Sutherland's release, as that of Terry Waite, is indeed a joyous moment for us all. We welcome him back from his long captivity. We rejoice with him and his loved ones. We're now making plans to speed him toward home. We hope that Tom's release and that of Terry Waite are yet further steps On this occasion, as in the past, we call for the immediate release of all persons held in the region without judicial process and for continued cooperation with international institutions, including the UN Secretary General and his personal representative, whose work we greatly appreciate. Thank you very much.
Mr. Deputy Foreign Minister, Mr. Ambassador from the United States, Mr. Ambassador from the United Kingdom. As some of you may know, I'm an old college prof from way back, and when I get up to speak, I generally get 50 minutes, which is about 5 times longer than I've had to go to the bathroom every day for the last 7 years, but that's another story. I would like to especially thank, as did Terry Waite a moment ago, the government of Syria for all of the work that they have done in those past months and years on our behalf. And I can tell you that in the past hour or so, hour and a half perhaps, we have been treated very, very nicely by some of the representatives of the government of Syria. And we've had a very happy time joking with them and laughing out loud for the first time for a long time. I remember laughing out loud in a basement cell once with Brian Keenan, who accused me of telling lots of stories, but, you know, that was really a case of the pot calling the kettle black, because as an Irishman, he had 10 times more stories than anybody else. Anyway, I want to thank the government of Iran as well, because we understand from listening to the radio consistently over the last 2.5 years or so, that the government of Iran has been playing an important role. As recently has the government of Israel, and Mr. Yuri Librani has been quite instrumental in negotiating very well for our release. Mr. Gian Domenico Pico from the UN has also apparently played a reasonably key role in all of these negotiations, and we are very, very grateful to him and to Secretary General de Cuellar for his undaunted and unstinting efforts all along the way there. Like Terry Waite, I would say that his job is not done, because we left Terry Anderson about 3 or 4 hours ago in Lebanon, and he is no longer chained to the wall, thank God, but he's still in a room that has very little fresh air and no daylight whatsoever. Terry Waite and I are very happy to have received our first gulps of good Lebanon and Syrian fresh air, but we have to wait till tomorrow to meet the sunshine, and we're looking forward to that very much. All I can say, though, about the English, they take a hell of a long time to get things done. He came to get me out of there about 5 years ago, and it's taken him 5 years to get me out. But finally, he's taking me home. So I'm very, very happy about that. But we're going to have to get some American technology to the Church of England and show them how to get this done a little bit faster. Well, anyway, after 2,347 little quiet, please. I always told my students to be quiet or I wouldn't continue my lecture, see? I'm not going to keep you here for 50 minutes, just a few more longer, and I'll tell you a few things about what we need to say. Like Terry Waite, again, I have been very impressed, in fact, humbled by the knowledge that we have gleaned over the months about how much loving care has been expended throughout the world, in America, in Britain, in France, everywhere, on our behalf. And it certainly makes us very humbled that little old us were accorded so much sympathy and so much effort on our behalf. I would like to say an especial word of thanks to 2 or 3 individuals and organizations. First of all, to Frank Bottano, my old colleague back in Fort Collins, Colorado, who apparently organized the Friends of Tom Sutherland. I'd be interested to know how many were in that group, because, you know, I didn't know I had more than about 2 or so. But maybe if he paid them, he could have gotten up a few more. Anyway, thank you, Frank, for all of that. It made me feel good. I had, in fact, been hearing lots of things about all the work that the Church of England was doing on behalf of Terry Waite, and of course there were lots of friends of Terry Anderson, and I think there were something like 3,000 journalists signed a petition at one time, so I had heard about this massive group of friends that he had, and it came as a nice surprise to me to find that I had, in fact, 1 or 2 friends back there. Also to Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa. I was very, very moved when I heard on VOA a recording of the Bells of Iowa State, which I particularly appreciated hearing when I was a student there on the campus, walking to class every morning from 4 to 8 until 8 o'clock. Those bells played. So when I heard them ring out 72 bells on the occasion of my 72nd month, I was extremely happy. So to Iowa State, I would say keep the bells ringing, friends back there, and we're very happy. I would like to say an especial thank you to VOA for bringing us those messages that we've received from our families on the short wave and indeed on medium wave in the middle of the night. And we listened to every one of them as many times as they broadcast it, and never tired of hearing special messages. VOA is an excellent radio station, but I'm afraid I have to admit that the BBC has everybody beaten, hands down. They, I would guess that if one took a bunch of money, I don't know how much they get, but it must be a lot, and said to a director, put together the best kind of international radio that you possibly could devise, I think you would come up with something like the BBC. And so, Mr. Ambassador, my thanks. When I hear
Thank you for saying that.
When I hear people like Barbara Myers on Outlook and John Tidmarsh on Outlook and such fantastically competent reporters as you have in Russia and in India and in China, I will be writing to some of them to tell them about the information they gave us and kept our minds alive and working during this period of captivity. And
that's fine.
Then, je voudrais dire également quelques petits mots pour Radio France Internationale, la radio jusqu'au bout du monde, que j'ai écouté chaque matin systématiquement pour espérant entendre quelque chose des otages. Et nous sommes tous les quatre qui étaient là-dedans dans la cellule très reconnaissants des efforts de la part de Radio France Internationale.
Thomas Sutherland now speaking in French, with which he is fluent, saying that special thanks go from him also to Radio France. We've heard from Thomas Sutherland just how appreciative and dependent all of them were on foreign radio broadcasts. Let's listen in.
And I know that you guys, you put in a lot of effort to come to these occasions, and I've seen a number of the other hostages being released, and blessings on their soul, but some of them just said a couple of words and they were gone, so it was hardly worth your effort. You can cull out a lot of the bullshit that I've been giving you here, and you can put in just what you want to say, or what you want to hear. But indeed, I really want to say one other special thank you that simply can't go without being said, and that is to Terry Anderson, your colleague. Without Terry Anderson, I couldn't have made it for 6.5 years. Terry Anderson, for me, was a very big challenge for the first couple of years. He's very, very, very bright, and it was humiliating to me to have to cope with his tremendous brain. After a couple of years, I came to grips with that, came to terms with it, and after that, our sailing was free. We've had a marvelous time for these 6 years together, 6.5 years now. We've been together, the two of us, all that time except for about 6 months when they carted him off to put him beside one of the Frenchmen and me with two others. And so I would just simply say to all of the friends of Terry Anderson, he is a man of whom all of you can be proud. He is in good health right now. He's in very good spirits. He's taken to writing poetry, which he hopes to publish. And he kept dozens of poems in his head. How he does it, I don't know, but he kept all of them in his head. You'll undoubtedly have a chance to read some of them sometime. But he's a man who never should have been kidnapped. He was, as I hope some of the rest of us were, he was doing his very best for the world and for Lebanon and reporting objectively about what was happening in Lebanon. And they never should have picked him up. They never should have picked any of us up, because I agree with Terry Waite that kidnapping is a great evil, and that those who perpetrate it, I don't think they really thoroughly understand, many of these young men, what they were doing to us, putting those chains back on our legs every day. And Terry Anderson just said a couple of days ago, I simply couldn't do that to another human being. I simply couldn't do it. Well, as John McCarthy told you a month or two ago, things have been a lot better for us. And part of the reason why things have been better has been because two of the young men who were kind of the captains of the teams that alternated looking after us, one by the name of Mahmoud and one by the name of Jamil. I christened him Jamil. And those two men kept their other workers in line, and they treated us with respect, and they tried to give us the kind of things that we needed. So I would say to Mahmoud and to Jamil, shukran kir for what you've done. And to all of
I would just want to say one final thing, thank you, and it's this, that in the last years we've lived through some of the suffering of the people of Lebanon. We've been under shell fire constantly, and to be under shell fire when you're chained to the wall is not pleasant. But we've lived through that suffering, and we, all of us, all hostages, would plead with those who are holding the people of South Lebanon, innocent people, being held as hostages, to release them soon, to put an end to this problem, to put an end to terrorism, and to find peaceful, humane, and civilized ways of resolving the very complex problems that face the people of the Middle East. We as hostages will give our utmost support to seeing this problem finished, not only for Western hostages, but for all in the Middle East who are held in that way. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Terry Waite concluding this extraordinary press conference with a thinly veiled appeal directly to Israel to release, as he called it, all the people from South Lebanon who are being held, to find, in Terry Waite's words, a peaceful, humane, and civilized way to resolve the problems of the Middle East. Both of these gentlemen, Terry Waite and Mr. Sutherland, demonstrating both the gratitude, the relief, and the stress of finally being free after, in Terry Waite's case, 5 years, and Sutherland's case, more than 6 years of captivity. Some indication of things to come from Terry Waite himself, who said that the other hostages who were in their presence, the other the American hostages, Alan Steen and Joseph Scipio, according to Terry Waite, he was told by one of his captors that they would be released within 5 days, that by the end of the month, Terry Anderson, who has been held the longest of the Western captives, would be freed. Again, Terry Anderson being free by the end of the month. They said, however, that there was no further information on the two German hostages still being held in Lebanon. Terry Waite says he inquired about them, but by the time he was able to get around to that, his captor had moved on and he was unable to get further information. Terry Waite appeared somewhat haggard, somewhat tired. It is not surprising by the ordeal he described, having been chained to the wall for 23 hours and 50 minutes each day, just 10 minutes of freedom. The Anglican Church envoy having been taken captive on the 1st of January, 1987, as he himself sought the release of other Western captives. And indeed, Thomas Sutherland joked about that in one of the lighter, more remarkable moments of this very remarkable news conference, where he said jokingly that Terry Waite finally delivered on his pledge 5 years later to bring him out of captivity. And indeed, he did. Terry Waite also mounting a very heartfelt appeal and relaying a very heartfelt story of what it is like to be chained to the wall and under fire, under shell fire in Lebanon, saying that he feels that all of the hostages have shared the ordeal of suffering in the Middle East. Our coverage will continue just after this.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Are you going to dance your whole life away? What about your future? Don't you worry about getting old.
He doesn't have to. He has a MetLife retirement plan. MetLife annuities earn tax-deferred interest and guarantee an income for life. What do you say to that?
Away?
Oh, brother. Get Met. It pays.
Real hardwood adds so much warmth and substance to a home that lots of people try to imitate real hardwood. They actually print a picture of wood on plastic, even paper, to fool you. Don't be fooled. Real hardwood glows with beauty and character you can't copy. Beauty to enjoy for generations. Hardwood, our renewable natural resource. For a book of fresh ideas to add genuine hardwood to your home, send $3 to Hardwood, Box 3300, Memphis, Tennessee 38173.
International call.